You were listening to the Battle Ready podcast. My name is Aaron McManus, and I'm here with my dad, Erwin Raphael McManus.
So good to be with you. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year and Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas.
I just love the season.
I feel like Thanksgiving was just here.
It's true.
December has flown.
Yeah, and I still have evidence of that because I haven't lost the Thanksgiving weight. So
no, I went on a run on Sunday morning before church, and my time was so slow.
I couldn't go on a run. I could go on a roll.
Okay. I want to talk about, you have a really good friend named John Gordon, and he kind of pressures you each year to give a word for the next year.
It's because he has this theme. I think he has a book called One Word or something like that.
Okay.
And he kind of really popularized this whole one word thing.
Okay.
And so every year he'll text me or Instagram me or tweet me or something and go, what's your one word, Erwin? What's your one word?
What's your one word?
And I'm a little defiant. I'm a little rebellious, so I would never give him a one word. And I'd say, John, I can't limit my life to one word or one sentence, or I'd give him 2 words or 3 words. And this year he posted on Instagram, what's your one word for 2022? And I know I was going to do something snarky or, just sort of, humorous, but a word exploded in my brain.
Well, I want you to say that word to the end. Can you say that word to the end?
I will say that word to the end, but I had to respond because I felt like it just filled me up, and I knew this was my word for the year.
So if you're listening right now, you got to wait to the end to find out the word. But I want to just talk about, how would you is there a word you would give the last year? Because that's something I think this podcast is very much about, is we're oftentimes reflective, we're oftentimes predicting the future, we're oftentimes talking about what's going on. It's a social commentary. But is there if you could give the last year a word, is there a word you would give it?
Wow, the word that came to my mind was chaos.
And the word that comes to my mind is fear.
Wow. I think you might be spot on, and your word is the flame, and I think my word is the smoke.
Well, I think my word builds on your word. I think your word was 2020.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and if you were to package these 2 years as like a bundle pack.
You see, I think 2020 was paralysis.
Well, I think
everything stopped.
That's what it felt like, but then you had all the riots.
That's true. And then you're right. 2020 was defined in many ways by chaos.
But then again, like, it feels like that. Now, last episode we talked about it. You started off, you said you have some things to pick with the government.
I do.
Let's go.
I just, I saw something this morning and I just thought, I'm going to talk about it and just going to let the chips fall they may, because I think this is really unhealthy.
Talk to me.
All right.
Our government, unhealthy. Very interesting.
This is from whitehouse.gov. So this isn't from someone's opinion about what the government is saying.
Yeah.
This is what the government is saying. Is that right, Brooke?
Yes, it's from Jeffrey Zients. He's the coordinator of the COVID-19 task force for Joe Biden.
We missed you, Brooke. We did. We missed you.
I mean, Austin was great.
Austin's always great.
But we did miss Brooke.
We did miss Brooke. Brooke's back.
All right. This is what whitehouse.gov says. You can go there yourself and read it. It says, we are intent on not letting Omicron disrupt work and school for the vaccinated. You've done the right thing, and we will get through this. For the unvaccinated, you're looking at a winter of severe illness and death for yourselves.
And you're going to hell.
Your families, and the hospitals you will soon overwhelm. When I read this, I was a combination of things. I was shocked. I was disgusted. I was angry. I thought, this is so dark. In my mind, my immediate response was, this isn't just creating fear. It feels evil to me. And I'm just going to say that. When you, we don't always refer to the Bible in Battle Ready, but, the Bible talks about blessings and curses. And
I would like to differ your statement, not differ your statement. I would like to just clarify your statement. We talk about the Bible way more than most podcasts.
Okay, that's true.
Yeah.
And all right, I can see that.
We're a podcast with the faith.
Absolutely, because we're people with faith.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And
our podcast gave its life to Jesus when it started 4 years ago.
And we baptized her 3 years ago.
Yes. And then again last year because he needed it.
Yeah. And this Sunday at Mosaic, I talked about the passage where Zechariah receives this vision that they're going to have a baby.
Right.
And the angel, because Zechariah didn't believe, said, you will be silenced. And he became mute for a season. And I talked about how the angel that was in the presence of God came with good news, and Zechariah, who actually had not been in the presence of God, had nothing good to say. And so God would rather have him be silent. And I'm reading this and I'm thinking, this feels like a blessing and a curse. It's like a blessing on the vaccinated and a curse on the unvaccinated. And so I want to deal with science because I've heard this phrase, trust the science for 2 years now.
Yeah.
And I think the government is not only not trusting science, it's manipulating science.
Right.
Because it says, for the unvaccinated, you are looking at a winter of severe illness and death for yourselves, your families, and the hospitals you may soon overwhelm. Based on the effect of Omicron, all the science tells us that Omicron's effect is virtually minimal. There is slight tiredness and maybe scratchy throats. There have been almost no reports of any severe response to Omicron.
Yeah.
There is zero scientific evidence that Omicron is going to drive people to hospitals. The Delta variant was different, and COVID-19 itself was different, but Omicron itself gives us no scientific basis from which to move toward panic. And then they have the White House say, you're looking for a winter of severe illness and death for yourselves, your families, and the hospitals you may soon overwhelm. This just feels almost apocalyptic. And, I try to be really politically agnostic, but I
don't. I have found faith
and
politically.
But this makes me angry.
Yes.
And of course later it talks about vaccinating your children. And I'm like, what is happening? And I think we need to pay attention to this because, as dangerous as COVID was to many, many people, it was still a low percentage of the whole. But Omicron is not that. And it seems almost as if the government cannot actually in its own integrity go, hey, we're overreaching here. This Omicron isn't dangerous. I mean, really the headline should be, thank God Omicron is mild. But instead, we have this global headline of we're all going to die. And
what do you think?
I'm just angry about it. I just think it's really wrong. I think what the government is doing is unhealthy. It's going to destroy our society's mental health. I think we have a generation of people who are living in fear. And I think they're only adding to the problem.
Yeah, it's really interesting watching people that you find. There's some incredible people around us in our community, and I've lost a lot of respect for people who live in fear. And it doesn't mean, because I think we all live in fear. I think that's something I think about daily. I'm someone who has lived in a constant state of fear. I think fear of, whether I'll be great or not, fear if I'll accomplish anything, fear of can I step out of the shadow of being your son, fear of being Mariah's big brother, just tons of fears, like normal, I think, human fears. And then you add apocalyptic fears.
Yeah.
And then you add political fears. Then you add, like the cancel culture. And then you add all of these fears that have kind of become this conglomeration. Is that really a word?
Yeah, it is. Well done.
I just George Bush that one into the future. A conglomeration of
No. You actually
fear.
said a word that's real by accident. George Bush would make up words that were not real on purpose.
But I think George Bush is in the future coming back, making words up, going, you haven't seen it in the future, but George Bush is an agent of the future. That's all I'm saying.
All right, here we go.
I'm kidding. No, so I do think that this is added to it, right? I have a couple to really make it simple. Trust the science is trust the liberals. That's really what it is. It really is what it is. And the phrase I think a lot of people were using in LA of which evil do you choose for president was the better of two evils. That was the choice with Biden was the better of two evils. That was what people kept saying. That's the phrase, right?
Yeah. I think that's right. The better of two evils, isn't that right? Isn't that phrase?
Correct.
Okay.
I got two for two.
You're 2 for 2. Keep going.
On a Monday morning. Let's
don't lose
go.
Track.
Don't lose track. But I really do think for the first time in a while, we're seeing two evils at play, right? Because I, not trying to paint them in their entirety. I think every human has things that are good about them, but I think you're watching a political party do something really evil for the last 4 years, and now you're watching a political party do something really, really dark for the last 2 years. And
only a year.
A year?
A year.
Good Lord.
Right, we've only had a year.
It's like Game of Thrones. It's the long
Biden.
winter right now.
And because I always try to assume good intention, I'm like, the only good intention I can put behind this is that we have people in charge who are so paralyzed by fear that they are blind to the science and incapable of looking at the facts and communicating hope. Or it's such a ploy of manipulation to try to get people to conform who have not been vaccinated. And I've been vaccinated, so this is not me fighting for myself, but I am fighting for a future where the government does not have that kind of totalitarian control over every person's life.
Yeah.
And I think this, to me, feels dictatorial.
Yeah, it does feel dictatorial.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, thank God Joe Biden's one of the worst leaders we've ever seen in our lives, because, Trump was a dark figure, but he was polarizing, and that was a scarier thing, I think. Biden, it doesn't feel like Biden's, from my perspective, it doesn't feel, and Brooke, you could chime in on this, it doesn't feel like President Joe Biden has maybe the strategic intellect or prowess to put these things in motion. It feels more nefarious.
It feels like there are people around him doing it.
Yeah, it feels like the party coalition trying to create a narrative to instill fear in our society.
What do you think?
And not in conspiracy, just going this is what it feels like.
Yes, but also he was stepping into this machine that's been running for 2.5 years, and to try to change,
When you say the machine, do you mean the Democratic Party?
And what do you mean 2.5 years?
Yeah, the Democratic Party's response to COVID.
Sure.
And I agree that he hasn't done anything to change the narrative.
Right, but wouldn't you think that this is a moment where, as president, you would say, we Democrats were right about COVID-19, and we're right to be concerned about Delta. Omicron is not the same thing. We don't need to be worried about this. The American people need to go back to work and just the life is normal. And this is not a apocalyptic moment. Omicron is not something that you need to worry about. We don't send out death sentences for the common cold.
I don't understand the hesitancy to take a stronger stance. I don't know if it's not wanting to go against the general world sense when entire countries are shutting down around us and we're not, if that will make us look weak in our response. I'm not sure what it is, but there must be something that we're not seeing.
I think the key word was hesitancy to take a strong stance. I think you have to have strength to take a strong stance. Yeah. We watched a president for the last 4 years take a really strong stance on really stupid things, right? So that, but there was a lot of strength. It wasn't in the right direction, but there was a lot of power. And now we're watching a different kind of power, right? And I think maybe it would be, I would love to hear you talk about, why the mechanism. I listened to a debate between, three people that were super boring, and Jordan B. Peterson, who is 50-50 depending on the day. Yeah. And it was, each one of them were a different political kind of perspective, but they kind of teamed up, 2 conservatives and 2 liberals, and I think 2 Canadians, or 1 Canadian, 1 British guy, and 2 Americans. And it was really interesting hearing, because one of the conclusions was that the other side led with fear. They lead with fear, that it isn't even about function or perspective or even intelligence, because everyone in that party was intelligent, or that conversation. But it was really the conclusion was, if you are on the left, it was being led by fear, where on the right was a different perspective. And for me, whichever way you lean, it doesn't really matter to me. I just think being able to have open conversation, where you talk about trust the science, trust the data. The fact that the White House is putting out a statement without actual data backing it. Yeah. Why the entirety of our academic background do we have to cite our sources until you get to be the president? Do you know what I'm saying? You remember we weren't allowed to use Wikipedia?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm older than you guys. We didn't have Wikipedia.
Yeah. Well, it didn't matter, because neither did we. We weren't allowed to use it, even though everyone already did. But I don't understand. How is the president able, or the press secretary able to make press releases without actually citing its sources and backing it with actual functional data and science?
But for all you here students, here's how you use Wikipedia. Yeah. You go to the bottom of Wikipedia, you go to all the references, and you go to the original material, and that's how you can actually use Wikipedia without using Wikipedia. But presidents, yes. don't seem to have to cite science and don't seem to have to cite data.
Right.
But I think sometimes it's because they're more driven by the political narrative than they are by actually the truth. I mean, I just look at like functional things, like we have to be vaccinated, it looks like, to get on airplanes.
Okay.
But we don't have to be vaccinated to cross the border illegally. So it makes me wonder, and here, I'm an immigrant, I'm just saying this, it makes me wonder if we're actually sincere in what we're trying to implement. Like, are we trying to simply make life for citizens so difficult that they're forced to be vaccinated? Because if we really believed that the vaccination was for the safety of all the people, we would not allow anyone to cross the border without having both the vaccinations and maybe the booster, because that's what they're saying. So you wouldn't allow thousands upon tens of thousands of people to cross the border unless we vaccinated. Why can't, you're trying to force Americans to be vaccinated, why can't you force undocumented aliens who are crossing the border to be vaccinated, saying, hey, look, if you're going to come across here illegally, then you have to be here for 3 weeks. You have to have double vaccination, and then we'll let you come in against the law.
That would be the easiest way to vaccinate people in at the border. But
no, I'm saying
you're not talking about immigration. You're just talking about the duplicity,
the inconsistency, and the duplicity of what we're saying as a nation we're implementing because we're concerned about COVID.
Yeah,
and I'm going. It feels so dynamically political right now that I think there are probably moments where President Trump should have said, hey, you need to go do this, even if it went against the politics. And I think there are moments now with Biden, he needs to say, hey, we need to stop acting like this is the same thing, even if it goes against his politics. But just the language made me angry. It just felt like a curse, Get ready for winter, severe illness and death for you, your families and loved ones, and the hospitals you're going to overflow in. And I'm like, what government? I mean, it felt Marxist. I mean, I'm sorry. It just
explain how it felt Marxist.
Because when you have a government that uses fear and coercion to move people toward compliance, that's when it no longer feels like a democracy. And it makes me nervous because I'm going, as humans, we abdicate freedom when we're driven by fear because we choose safety over freedom. And I see this as an overwhelming avalanche of momentum where we are just willing to, mandates are supposed to be temporary, quote, temporary laws. But the mandates have become permanent laws. And I mean, we had a letter sent to us because of one of our campuses from going to the police. It was a concerned citizen, and I'm going. This is what
the letter say. Give context.
Yeah, because we say that in one of our campuses, we encourage you to wear masks if it makes you feel comfortable, to stay home if you feel uncomfortable in a crowd. But we will not be strictly reinforcing the mask mandate because we're not going to walk around and tell people to put their masks on. We're not going to be the government telling people what to do. And so someone, quote, reported us for being honest on our website about our position on that. And I got the police sending me a letter going, you need to conform. And I'm going, a concerned resident in Czechoslovakia, that's what happened during the communist regime. The reason the Soviet Union was able to arrest and kill pastors and arrest and kill Christians is that other people turned in their neighbors and said, hey, that person is a Christian. That person reads the Bible. That person is a pastor. That person goes to church. And the communists depended on, quote, the
concerned citizen.
The concerned citizen. And the moment we have, quote, concerned citizens turning each other in, and by the way, and I wish I had the details of this, I was at my last TED conference, and they had a speaker they were really elevating as a hero from China because he created an algorithm where people in China could turn in their neighbors if they were not meeting the environmental regulation code. So if they were, I guess, not recycling properly or not following the environmental policies. And so Ted was just absolutely celebrating this person and how we should turn this into a global kind of application. And I'm going, wait a minute. This is what we want. We want our neighbor turning in our neighbor because he didn't put the paper in the recycling bin and turning him into the government so he can get arrested. And I'm going, any time that we now think that China is our model for human rights and for responsibility is a problem.
You know what the best part about recycling in LA is that half the time the trash truck just picks up the recycling bin as well.
Oh, I hope not.
No,
I go through a lot of effort.
Go outside and watch, and you're like, it's just the same truck that takes a loop and then comes back, and you're like, oh, it's what am I doing? So you said if we're looking at the Chinese government to do things to be an example of how to police our citizens, and we're doing something wrong. What government would you look at as a model of, I don't know, progression?
Well, I think the reality is that all governments are flawed. And we have to keep moving toward ideals. But
that wasn't what I was asking. I was asking which government would you look to? What government's doing it better than China? What government's doing better than us? Like, are there actual? Like, some people would say, what is it, like the socialism in Norway? But Norway's not actually socialist anymore.
Yeah, that's right.
But what would it be?
Well, you see,
is there a government that's doing things that
I am incredibly biased?
Well, you would say El Salvador, but I would say that's where the more
no, I think that the best system
serial killers live in the world.
The best system of government in the world is the United States.
Yeah, I would agree.
And whether it's a Republican or Democrat, no matter who it is,
try having this podcast in China.
Yeah, no,
it wouldn't go well.
Well, we would not be seeing each other for quite a long time.
No,
but I know it's Christmas, and I know this episode's supposed to be more positive and optimistic, but our podcast last week was very prophetic. It was called Robbing Season. And this weekend, 3 of my friends who were coming to my Christmas party were robbed.
Yeah.
One of them came home and their entire house was ransacked. They took a ladder and climbed into the second floor because they realized people don't lock their windows in the second floor. So lock your windows in the second floor. Another one of my friends called me. He was at the gym. They broke into his locker, stole his wallet and keys, were already spending his credit cards to buy things. And he was in a panic because he had to get, and he's a friend of mine. I don't want to say it on podcast. Okay. And then the third one was someone who went hiking, locked her door. They crashed through the window and stole her purse. Yeah. And that was just over the weekend after we did the episode Robbing Season. So because Battle Ready we're supposed to be dealing with real issues, I think we really are in the middle of a cultural crisis. I think this is a moment where we're seeing violence go out of control. I mean, the amount of theft is unparalleled, and I was talking to someone this past week, and they were talking about how
Hold on. By the way, so literally as we're speaking, I get a DM because the Shade Room, which is like an Instagram that has 25 million followers on Instagram. Mm-hmm. I don't care if you follow it or don't follow it. Mm-hmm. To people who are listening, they just posted about winter of illness and death. They posted the White House briefing, and the comments are 10,000 comments just talking about how ridiculous is this? Like, this is our country. Like, this is insane.
Yeah.
Insane. Anyways, it feels like it's very timely.
Yeah. I just feel like there's a mindset shift, a philosophical shift in our nation that we need to be paying attention to right now.
Okay.
And even though she did not confirmed, and I'm going to go ahead and just say this, when I don't know how to pronounce her name exactly, is it Saleh Omarova, when she was nominated by the Biden administration to be comptroller for the currency of the United States. And when you realize it—
Controller of the currency?
Controller of the currency, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, here you have a person who was actually from the Soviet Union, a person who studied at Moscow, and I'm looking at some of her background here. It says she went to Moscow State University, and on the Lenin Personal Academic Scholarship. And her thesis from Moscow State University is titled Karl Marx's Economic Analysis and the Theory of Revolution in the Capital. And here's the person that is being they tried to appoint to be over our currency, who believed that the entire banking system should be eliminated and that the Fed should actually take control over all banking in the United States, who believed that the Soviet model of, quote, equality between men and women was far superior than ours, and we should actually look to how to emulate that. And
has it ever been this complicated? Because what's interesting to me— oh, sorry, I know I cut you off, but has it ever been this complicated? Like, 'cause you've had a bit more generations than I have.
Yeah.
But the 60s were complicated. Mm-hmm. we were killing our own presidents, and that was an interesting thing. But like we the last administration got criticized heavily for being connected to Russia, and now it feels like
this administration is more connected to Russia. And
Brooke,
maybe
confirm or deny.
That it's more regulated?
No.
It's
more
just as connected to Russia as they were saying the
one.
Trump administration was.
I'm not saying this is the thing. We're not saying conspiracy. It's just saying we're saying public perception, right? Like what it feels like in the media or in like the Biden administration almost appointing this woman that is an actual Marxist communist.
And openly, like not a person without integrity, a person who has a history, and she actually has a philosophy of economics and of capitalism and communism. And if you go back, even I remember the one time President Obama was sitting there with Putin, and the microphones were off, and he whispered something like, "Hey, wait till I'm elected. I'll have more flexibility.
Wait till I'm reelected. I'll have more ability to help." Yeah.
And so I just wonder if we as citizens are really naive in thinking that Trump is the only president who had a relationship with Russia. It just seems that we have relationships with nations from a political perspective that we even banish from an economic perspective, and and those things concern me. But the reason I bring this up is because I think there's an ideological shift in our nation that says whatever American democracy is, it hasn't worked. It's not good. And we need to look at socialism and other ideologies for the future of America. And I just want to say, as an immigrant from El Salvador, and
you really hide behind that one sometimes.
I'm standing on that platform right now because I think if you grew up here all your life and you think socialism is a beautiful ideology, you need to pay closer attention to what it creates around the world.
Yeah, go live in Venezuela and go live in Venezuela. See if you last longer than 6 months.
And you need to realize
stay alive.
Venezuela was the most prosperous, richest country in all of South America before it became socialist. And now the people are starving to death.
Right.
And I think that one of the dynamic issues is that, and I saw this with Trump, like a party is elected, and when they're elected, they think, oh, we can push things to the extreme in our direction. And so when extreme right, which Americans are not. Americans are not a people who want a nation of racists. This is not a nation that wants to affirm white nationalism. This is not a nation that doesn't care about diversity and the outsider. And Trump just kept pushing it further and further to the right. Now we have President Biden. I do not believe he's inherently a socialist or anything like that. I just think what happens is the Democratic Party got elected and they go, oh, we have a mandate and we're going to push this thing as far to the left as we can. And no one seems to get that the reason millions upon millions of people did not vote for you is because most of America is actually in the middle, and they're terrified that you're going to use being elected as a mandate to push things to a political extreme.
Do you think they'll ever get to a point where we take the country back, and not like we as in me and you, that's not what I'm talking, but like the people actually take the country back in a healthy way? Because for me, I'm not anti-government. Like I'm definitely not an anarchist, but I am someone who truly believes, I think the longer you look at the problem of whether it's wars, whether it's big pharma, big business, whatever problem you have, like whether it's environmentalist, like I'm none of those, like I don't feel like I'm a radical in any of those sectors, but I do believe that like if you look at like where people are dying, right? Like we have the ability to feed people, we don't feed people. We have the ability to stop wars, and like we worry more about regulating weed and regulating cigarette smoke and regulating alcohol and taxing every which like vice in the world. And we don't regulate, we talked about this last time, we don't regulate like the ability to kill somebody. Like why are guns even something that are still being made? Like have we not reached a level of intellect in our humanity that says like we need to stop making nukes and then hiding them in major, like, like maybe this is off point, but I'm going, are we really holding the real people accountable? Because I know I've lost friends. I was supposed to be at a wedding this weekend, but the guy, I don't think we're friends anymore because I think he listened to the podcast and heard my rants on some of the politics. But he's like the irony is that like, Yeah, I don't want to go for them, but like the irony is that like this woke culture has kind of taken over the centerpiece, the spotlight, right? And in 20 years, it'll probably flip.
You hate that phrase woke culture. I can't believe you used it.
Well, because I don't like the people who are woke. Like, you know what I mean? So I think it's like a correlation of my feelings towards the word is my feeling towards the people. So I describe them by something that, you know, I don't know. So anyways, this is what I'm trying to say. Are we holding the right people responsible? Like, I think this is a fear tactic by the government, you know, and I hate saying that because it makes it sound like conspiracy theorists, but I really do think that there is no way to ignore that press release by the White House is meant to scare you.
Yeah. And
last year was, if you go home, you're going to kill your grandfather and grandmother.
Yeah, you're going to kill
your parents.
I heard Garcetti say that.
No, like, go ask your question. Garcetti is a fool.
What do they win? If 100% of Americans are vaccinated, what do they win? What's the incentive? Why the fear?
Isn't that the question?
Let's ask you, because I have thoughts, but what do you think, Brooke?
What do I think?
Yeah, what do you think they win?
Great question. That gives the answer.
I don't know, because if 100% of Americans are vaccinated, then it's through a forcibly delivered mandate that I think would result in some kind of revolution.
Right. So, but let me flip around. They say the goal is to have everybody vaccinated. Will that eliminate COVID?
No.
Will eliminate the threat of COVID?
No.
So we know that the outcome that's being stated is impossible if we have 100% vaccinated. But I think you're right. It is moving people toward a new political system where the government moves toward almost a martial law of mandates, and Americans are now trained to conform. And one of my friends was on his own property. He saw some kids wearing masks playing outside. And he said to them, he drove up and he said, "Hey, you don't have to wear your mask. It's outdoors and I own this property. So it's okay. You don't have to wear your mask." And the kids couldn't take them off because they had been so programmed that they were afraid to take their mask off.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you that it's not hard to change human behavior. Fear is the Pavlovian dog that causes humans to give up their freedom and to conform to oppressive mandates. And you have to be careful. And so I'm so angry by what the government put out that I'm not neutral. I am not neutral. This was wrong. This is on the border of evil.
No, it was evil. It is evil. It's borderline brainwashy. That's the issue. Like they're trying to brainwash a generation of going like,
and it is violating the science.
It also, I think, is destroying like the sanctity of and like the reverence for the president of the United States. Like I just genuinely have. I mean, the last 4 years, I think, destroyed so much of the reputation of like who is the leader of our country. But I think the last year, I mean, it feels like 10 years. But I think when a Republican is like I've been watching Game of Thrones again. It's like when a Republican wins, it's like the long summer. Like a bunch of bad stuff can happen, but at least it's bright outside and you get more money. And then like the long winters when a Democrat's in there because it just gets dark, brooding, and really creepy and weird. And there's like White Walkers walking everywhere.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was just a joke. Don't take it seriously. My issue with this is the young kids who think that what the government says is undeniably true.
I thought being a liberal meant you were a free thinker.
No.
I thought being a liberal meant that you were more open to more people and all their different views. And it feels to me like being a liberal has become now the new fundamentalism.
Interesting. What was the old fundamentalism?
Being conservative.
Yeah.
The moral majority, the extreme right, the 1980s.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, in the 1980s, man, if you're not right wing, you were not an American. And you were not a Christian. And so being a Christian and being a Republican became synonymous. And it feels like now it's gone to the other side of things. And so that's why in the 80s, I was definitely not a part of that moral majority world. I was in my mind more of a free thinking liberal. And now I'm going, no, I'm still a free thinking person. Being a liberal now no longer allows me to be free thinking. I have to conform not only to the thinking, but the language. Because if you don't use the language, you're no longer a part of this tribe. And
I'm good. How do you cancel my membership? I want to cancel my membership to this tribe. I'm super good.
And I just, and you know, like it's interesting because even in Battle Ready, I never feel nervous saying something against the right. But I do feel nervous when I say something against the left.
I used to. now I know my Instagram might blow up for like 3 days, but
yeah.
My thing with like, there's an artist I like,
Mm-hmm.
and he wrote a song called Cancel Me. And the chorus says, I hope you cancel me so I can go spend time with my family. Like, and but this is my thing. Like, and I'm not trying to be arrogant about it. I'm just like, we're posing questions, we're asking questions, and I feel like so much of the government's focus is on the wrong things.
Yeah. And today I'm not just posing questions. Today I'm actually making a statement that is definitive for me. What the government posted was wrong. It's destructive and it's evil. And if we allow this kind of framework to continue, we're going down a dark, dark path where fear is going to be the defining narrative of our culture, and it's going to destroy people. And let me tell you, far more dangerous than COVID is the level of loneliness and depression, the exploding rate of suicide, the explosion of violence, of disrespect for private property. We are in a societal moment of chaos, and this is not helping.
We talked about, or I just made the comments of like, cancel my membership. I'm good with not being a part of this tribe. Having a conversation about that, like, I don't really know what tribe I feel a part of, because the other side, like, I don't feel connected to the Christian conservative or the right wing conservative. I think some of the like the family nucleus stuff is much healthier. I think some of the family values are much healthier. I think even the abortion laws are crazy, but you're looking at, like, we don't live in a perfect society, so the abortion laws don't work in that way. You have to be more nuanced. We've talked about this before on the pods. I don't feel scared saying it. I don't feel scared saying anything. Just the reality of, like, when someone tries to cancel me because of things that I've said, that, like, yeah, it's fine, whatever. Just we'll come back to this episode and be like, they're coming for me at some point. Let's just offer my head at this point. Because this is my thing. Like, I like the idea of, like, the global church and it helping each other. But also at the same time, I don't enjoy going to other churches, like, really, like, at all. And so I was having this conversation with friends, and I'm realizing I'm becoming negative about the overall church, because I would never take my friends to almost any of them, my friends who don't know God.
Right.
Even like Mosaic, I didn't want to bring anyone here for the last little bit, because I was like, are we at the place yet where I feel comfortable enough to bring people in? I'm hard on ourselves. I'm hard on myself, and I don't even platform my own self at church. We have this conversation all the time, because I don't know where I'm at mentally or in my health or even spiritually. And I feel like we create such a unique thing, but it can be so easily misconstrued and connected to the greater majority of Christian conservatism.
Sure. Yeah. When I see statements and posts from conservative Christians, I cringe and I think I just can't be a part of this. Jesus, I love you. Why do I have to be identified with everyone who is identified with you?
Right.
And I'm sure they feel that way about me, going, or they probably would go, Erwin McManus isn't one of us. And I'm like, you're right. We all have a common faith in Jesus, but we don't have a common way of seeing life and seeing the world.
No.
And I think that's what people understand. Just because you're a follower of Jesus doesn't mean that you now have a singular way of seeing reality. And I have a very different way of seeing the world than, I would say, 99.9% of the Christians I know, and especially the ones who are public and who have a voice and a broader spectrum. But at the same time, and we at Mosaic, I would say 95% of our congregation is probably on the left. They're more like liberal Democrats or socialists. And
you made a comment on Sunday talking about liberalism, and it made people feel very awkward.
That's because our church is almost all liberals.
Do you know what he said, Brooke? Do you remember? It was in Hollywood.
I don't.
Austin, do you remember what it was? I cannot remember. Do you remember what you said?
I don't know. I might have been talking about the Omicron variant.
I wasn't in Hollywood, sorry.
I know, you said it and you went in on it in Hollywood, and I was like, I was so shocked. I was like taking notes and writing something down, and then you said it and I was like,
that was before I read this.
It was before you read this.
Yes.
Good Lord.
Because I felt that the press and the political manipulation of the Omicron variant was unacceptable.
Yeah.
And I've been trying really hard to make sure our church was always respectful of what the government has been asking, of what our community wants and what it needs. And,
right.
and I didn't want anyone to be able to say Mosaic isn't a church that believes in science, and
no, I mean, I think you said it the best. You're like, I'm obsessed with science. This is where this is really tough for me.
Yeah, and that's right. I've always been obsessed with science, and I do not like when a person still claims something and no longer builds on it. And I've been really, to me, incredibly flexible when, like, Dr. Fauci and others from the CDC and others have gotten things wrong and then changed their minds and changed their perspectives. I understand science is fluid. The problem is whenever you make a statement, you act like science is static. You go, trust the science. And I'm going, no, this is what science sees today. In 6 weeks, you're going to see something different. You go, I mean, trust the science when you change your mind again. And we need to be more honest and say, this is the best information we have. But the best information we have right now is Omicron is not something we need to fear. And you're not going to die. The likelihood of you dying because of Omicron is so low that there should not be a government release like this. And one of the things I said Sunday is, like, death is inevitable. Living is not. And right now,
no, what you said on Sunday was just letting you know you're going to die.
I said you're going to die.
But will you have ever lived?
Yeah, and that's the reality. Right now, everybody's just surviving and existing. So I was talking to someone last night, and they're a really successful businessman, and grew up in South LA, and we were talking about the crime all over the city, and I said, why do you think there's such an acceleration of crime?
Right.
And he said, I think there's a direct correlation to the stimulus packages, having the opportunity to live without working, and now they want to have the same lifestyle without working, and so stealing becomes easier. And but I actually think there's a more subtle social narrative, that the moment you create a narrative that anyone who has is evil and anyone who doesn't have is good, you no longer create a value system for private property.
Yeah, you talked about this on the last episode.
Because if you have something, you got it from some evil mechanism, and so my stealing it from you is just making the world even. It's fair for me to steal from you. And I think right now in our culture, because of the way we're creating this class warfare, there is a mindset that says it's fair for us to steal from people because it's just making things even. You're rich because you're evil. I'm poor because I'm not. So I'm going to take what you have. And we need to realize that there are cultural hinge points that make democracy work.
Right.
And one of them is the value of hard work. The belief that with hard work and determination, you can create a better life and a better world. And once you stop believing that, you actually lose a part of the soil that makes democracy healthy.
Mm. Okay. I think we're good on this one, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, we're going to go into a new year, and we're going to be facing new challenges. I think it's important that we look back on this year and have maybe a little bit of a stark but honest assessment of where we're at as a society.
Right.
Because one of the things that we're really committed to is to always be a voice of hope.
Yes.
To always believe in a better future.
Yes.
And my word for 2022 is the word audacity. I want to live an audacious life, doing more than anyone ever thought I could accomplish in my life because of my relationship with Jesus.
Right.
And so in a sense, today we're creating the backdrop of where we're at so that we can actually step into next year's battle readies to start talking about where we're going and how we're going to get there.
I love that. Thank you guys so much for listening. I'm so grateful. Every person who has written a review has given us 5 stars. I'm not so grateful for the 4 stars or the 3 stars or anything else. No, thank you so much for everybody who listens to this podcast each and every week, for the people who binge this podcast, for the people who watch it on YouTube, who listen to it on Spotify, Apple Music, and all the other places you listen to it. We're so grateful. You can follow us on Instagram at Battle Ready Podcast. And thank you, Dad, so much for being with us today.
I'm so glad.
And
Merry
every
Christmas
episode.
and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Merry Christmas, guys.